Welcome to another edition of Connecting California. We are connecting with Assemblyman Cameron Smyth. Assemblyman Smyth, thanks for talking with us today.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for having me back.
This week, the governor released his proposed budget, which was met with mixed reviews from members on both sides of the aisle. What are some of the positive aspects of Governor Brown's budget?
You know, there are a few things that are part of the budget that I can support. I think one, Governor Brown has finally realized some things that other governors have not done, that we can no longer really rely on Band-Aids and gimmicky accounting. And some of the cuts that he's proposed, while they are painful, they are real. And that's what previous budgets have not included. A lot of the budgets, while they had some cuts, were backfilled by federal funds and shifting from other state funds. So there are some very real cuts as part of this budget, and again, as painful as it may be, they are necessary. Additionally, the fact that K through 12 education is, for the most part, being spared from any additional cuts, I think is important. As a parent, as the kids in the public school system, I see firsthand the struggles of teachers and administrators trying to educate our kids, and so I appreciate that in this round, Governor Brown is leaving our K through 12 system alone for the most part.
And as chair of the Assembly Local Government Committee, are you supportive of his plan to move public services to the local level? I do have some concerns. In theory, I do believe that local control is the way to go. However, just by realigning programs to local governments may create problems at the local level. I mean, they may not want them. There's no guarantee of funding for those programs, and there's no guarantee that local governments that want to administer them or have the capability to cover them. I mean, a lot of Trinity County doesn't have a stoplight in the whole county, and then we have I represent Los Angeles County with 10 million people. So things are not always going to be equitable from one county to another. And I think there are some concerns that I have with the elimination of economic enterprise zones, redevelopment zones. I would have real concerns and won't support the elimination of those two programs because I think they do help bring jobs and the economy back in California. And you're just mentioning some of the problems. What do you see as the biggest problem with his proposal?
Well, I think from a both political and policy standpoint, asking for an additional 5-year extension on the tax increases of 2009. I didn't support those in 2009, and I certainly don't support extending them another 5 years. But aside from myself, I just don't see how the voters in California will accept another 5-year extension when just 2 years ago they rejected a 2-year extension, and to ask them 2 years later to go for another 5 years, I just don't think I don't think it's going to happen, and I don't think it's reasonable to ask that of California voters.
Yeah, and if tax increases are off the table, are deeper cuts the only solution?
I think we get caught up. It's always the discussion is either more taxes or more cuts. And while I think state does need to be trimmed, we need to look at the third option, which is spending the money we do have more efficiently. There's numerous examples of spending here at the state that has been done poorly. That if we look at just the California Performance Review that was done in 2004, identified about $32 billion in savings over a 5-year plan. Now that may not solve all of our problems, and everything proposed in that may not be workable, but it's a good place to start. And so instead of it sitting on the shelf somewhere collecting dust, we should break that out. So before we talk about cutting funding to disabled Californians or asking for increase in income tax on Californians, why don't we look at how we spend the money we already do have before we look at those other two options?
Living within our means. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Michelle.
And this has been another edition of Connecting California.